Let's call him Joe, not because he deserves a name, but because I refuse to speak his real one. Joe was a wife-beater. A bully in every sense of the word. A man who thought his fists could replace reason, and his lies could rewrite reality, but that all came crashing down when I was hired to take him apart, legally, financially, and permanently. My client? Joe's former business partner. But more importantly, he was the brother of the woman Joe used to beat. His sister. You see, Joe didn't just cross a business line, he crossed a bloodline, and that was a mistake. I'm a lawyer. The kind of lawyer people call when they're done being pushed around. And Joe had pushed people for years. He'd already walked away from his divorce scot-free, no child support, no consequences. Just a settlement rigged with manipulation. And veiled threats. That arrogance? It bled into everything he did, including business. Joe screwed my client out of a significant share of their company. On paper, it looked clean. In reality, it was pure fraud. Joe expected this lawsuit to be like everything else, an inconvenience. A joke. He even self-represented at first. No lawyer. Just him, a cheap suit, and an ego bloated from years of getting away with it all. But what Joe didn't know was that I come prepared. Always. I don't file a case unless I already know how it ends. While he was laughing and bragging to his tenants about how he'd crush us in court, I was dissecting his financials, his paper trails, his shell companies, everything. Joe lied on the stand blatantly, but this time, it didn't work. The judge saw through it. The evidence was airtight. And just like that, we had a massive judgment against him. Bigger than he could ever dream of paying. Still, he squirmed. He started shifting assets, using numbered companies, fake conveyances, anything to hide his wealth. But he forgot one thing: you can't hide from someone who knows where to look. Piece by piece, I dismantled him. We froze his accounts, seized his properties, found hidden holdings, until finally, he was down to one thing: a house. Well, technically, he lived in the unfinished basement. The upstairs was rented out and served as his only income stream. He cashed those checks at shady payday loan places, too scared to open a bank account we'd garnish in minutes. That house was his last hope. His fortress of solitude. His rat hole of survival, and it became my mission to take that from him. Joe thought he was clever. The house wasn't in his name. It was owned through a numbered company. But my investigator? He followed Joe home one day, and that was it. It took 2 years. 2 long years of court filings, hearings, and watching Joe try to squirm out with every shady trick in the book. But in the end, one afternoon, Joe stepped out to grab cigarettes. When he came back, the locks had been changed. He tried to plead. Through his pro bono lawyer, a guy I knew well, we shared a view of the same parking lot from our office windows. Can my client at least stay in the basement? The lawyer asked. I didn't even have to say no. Because the house wasn't mine anymore, it belonged to a nominee. One of my client's employees. A puppet buyer. I told him to go ask the new owner. But I knew the answer already. Joe had just lost the last real thing he had, except for one. His truck. It was this big, beat-up gas guzzler that somehow still ran. Too old and worthless to seize, so I let him keep it. Mostly because I wanted him to have somewhere to sleep. I wanted him to know exactly what he'd been reduced to. But Joe? He couldn't even keep that without screwing it up. One day, I got a call from the tenants at his former house. He parked his truck across the driveway and stormed off, the tenant said. He said he'd be back to sleep in it tonight. Now legally? That was trespassing. And practically? That was the mistake I was waiting for. I called one of the tow truck drivers I used to represent back when I did criminal defense. In just a few hours, Joe's truck was gone. Not to an impound. To somewhere special. The next day, I get a call. My client wants his truck back, the pro bono lawyer said. Then he shouldn't have blocked a driveway, I replied calmly, sipping my coffee while staring down at the truck 15 stories below, parked right in front of that very lawyer's building. You knew it was here the whole time, the lawyer barked, shaking with anger. Must have been a careless mistake, I said. But look, tell your client this: he can get in, drive away, and keep that truck. But if I ever see it again, I'll seize it. Oh, and it's got a full tank. Oil changed, too. I hung up before he could say more. 2 minutes later, I watched as Joe walked out of that office. Same cheap clothes. Same beat-up boots. But something had changed. There was no bounce in his step. No rage. No swagger, just defeat. He got in the truck. Started it. Drove off. Smoke trailing behind like the remnants of the life he used to have. I've taken down a lot of people over the years. But Joe? He's the only one I watched crumble in real time, from 15 stories up, and for a man who beat his wife, stole from his partner, and thought he'd never face consequences. I'd say that view was the most satisfying of all.